The 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial Penny. At first glance, it might look like just another 1-cent coin, but for collectors, this particular year tells a powerful story about one of the most important figures in American history, and in the right condition, or with the right minting mistake. The simple little penny can shock you with its value. In 2009, the United States Mint released a special series of Lincoln pennies to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. These coins were not ordinary. Instead of the usual reverse design, the Mint created 4 different designs showing the life journey of Abraham Lincoln, from his humble beginnings in a Kentucky log cabin to his rise as one of America's greatest presidents. That year became known among collectors as the Lincoln Bicentennial series. The coin you're looking at right now appears to be in fine condition, which means it has been in circulation, but still keeps clear details in the design. When you look closely at the front of the coin, you'll still see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. This design has been on the penny since 1909, created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Even after decades of circulation, Lincoln's face still carries a strong presence, reminding collectors why this coin series remains one of the most beloved in American history. But the real story often begins when we flip the coin over. Depending on the design, the reverse of a 2009 bicentennial penny may show Lincoln's early childhood home in Kentucky, his formative years in Indiana, his professional life in Illinois, or the powerful image of the unfinished Capitol dome during his presidency in Washington, D.C. Each design tells a chapter of Lincoln's life, turning these pennies into tiny history lessons that fit right into your pocket. Now here's where things start to get exciting. Most circulated 2009 bicentennial pennies in fine condition might only be worth a little more than 1 cent, maybe a few dollars to a casual collector. But hidden among these coins are a few extremely rare varieties that have stunned the coin collecting world. Some of these coins were struck with double die errors, where the design appears slightly doubled because of a misalignment during the minting process. Others were struck on the wrong metal planchet, creating coins that look normal at first glance, but weigh differently and can be incredibly rare. And then there are the coins that survived in nearly perfect condition, coins that somehow escaped years of circulation and remained sharp, bright, and untouched. When a rare error or ultra-high-grade example appears at auction, the numbers can become unbelievable. A pristine 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial penny graded in near-perfect condition has been known to bring tens of thousands of dollars from serious collectors. And when you combine a top-grade coin with a rare minting error, the value can skyrocket even further. In fact, one extraordinary example, with the dramatic mint error, shocked collectors when its estimated value climbed to nearly $450,000 in the high-end collector market. For a coin that most people would normally toss into a jar without thinking, that kind of value is almost impossible to believe. So how can you tell if your bicentennial penny might be special? First, look carefully at the date 2009 on the front. Then check the reverse design and pay attention to small details. Look for unusual doubling in the lettering, strange shapes in the design, or surfaces that appear sharper than normal circulated coins. Also check for the tiny mint mark under the date. Coins from different mints can sometimes carry very different values. Sometimes the difference between a 1-cent coin and a life-changing discovery comes down to the smallest details. And that's exactly why collectors across the country still search through jars, rolls, and old collections, hoping to spot one of these hidden treasures. And believe it or not, the next coin on our list might be even more surprising. Moving on to another bicentennial-era penny that has left collectors absolutely stunned. Next up is another fascinating coin from the 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial series, the 2009 Formative Years Lincoln Penny. At first glance, many people might think this coin looks a little unusual compared to the regular pennies they see every day. And that's because this design was created to capture a very specific moment in Abraham Lincoln's early life, a moment that helped shape the leader he would eventually become. When you look closely at the reverse of this coin, you'll see a young Abraham Lincoln sitting on a log, holding a book in his hands. Behind him stands a split rail fence, a powerful symbol of the hard physical labor that filled his childhood years in Indiana. This image represents Lincoln's formative years, a time when he balanced long days of farm work with an intense desire to learn. Lincoln was mostly self-educated, reading anything he could find by candlelight. After exhausting days in the fields, that powerful story is exactly why collectors love this coin. Now take a moment to notice the small D mint mark just below the year on the front of the coin. That little letter tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the major facilities responsible for producing millions of coins for circulation across the United States. While many of these coins were made, only a tiny fraction survive in remarkable condition or with unusual minting characteristics that collectors hunt for today. The example you're looking at appears to be in fine condition, meaning it circulated for some time but still shows clear details. Lincoln's portrait on the front remains strong, and the design on the reverse still clearly shows the young Lincoln reading his book. Coins in this condition are actually quite common in circulation, but sometimes the real story hides in the smallest details, and that's where things begin to get interesting. Some 2009 Formative Years pennies were struck with double die errors, where parts of the lettering or design appear slightly doubled because of a tiny shift during the die creation process. These errors are extremely exciting for collectors because they were never meant to leave the mint. Yet a few slipped into circulation, where lucky collectors later discovered them. Other coins from this series show off-center strikes, unusual die cracks, or strange surface textures caused by the intense pressure used during the minting process. While many people might see these as simple imperfections, collectors recognize them as rare minting events that can make a coin dramatically more valuable. Then there are the coins that somehow survived in spectacular condition. Coins graded in what collectors call mint state, where the surfaces still shine with original luster and almost no wear at all. When one of these rare high-grade coins appears at a major coin auction, collectors can become extremely competitive. The bidding climbs higher and higher as collectors fight to add a rare piece to their collections, and that's when the numbers can start to sound unbelievable. While most circulated to 009D, formative years pennies might only be worth a few cents or a few dollars. A top-grade example with a strong strike and brilliant surfaces has been known to reach tens of thousands of dollars in the collector market, but when you combine a near-perfect condition coin with a dramatic minting error, the value can explode. Some experts believe that a rare error example of the 2009D formative years penny could climb to an estimated $570,000 if the right collectors compete for it at auction. For a coin that originally cost just 1 cent to produce, that kind of value is enough to leave anyone speechless. So if you ever come across a 2009D Lincoln Bicentennial penny, take a moment before spending it. Look carefully at the details. Check the lettering, the date, and the design of young Lincoln reading on that log. Sometimes the tiniest doubling or unusual mark can be the clue that separates an ordinary coin from an extraordinary discovery. And remember, we've only uncovered 2 coins so far, and the surprises are just getting started. If you enjoy discovering hidden treasures in everyday pocket change, make sure you subscribe to us Mint Mysteries, because the next bicentennial penny we're about to reveal has a story and a potential value that might be even more shocking. Moving on, let's talk about a penny that many people have seen countless times, but almost never look at closely enough. The 1973 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin. At first glance, it seems like just another copper penny from the 1970s. Millions of Americans use these coins every day to buy groceries, pay for gas, or drop into vending machines. But hidden among those ordinary pennies are a few rare examples that have left collectors completely stunned. The coin you're looking at appears to be in extra fine condition, and that already makes it far more interesting than most pennies still floating around in circulation today. Extra fine means the coin has seen some use, but the details are still sharp and strong. When you examine the front of the coin, Abraham Lincoln's portrait still looks crisp. You can clearly see the shape of his hair, the lines in his coat, and the overall structure of the famous design created by Victor David Brenner back in 1909. The date 1973 sits clearly to the right of Lincoln's portrait. For many collectors, that date immediately sparks curiosity, because the early 1970s were a fascinating time at the United States Mint. During those years, billions of pennies were produced, yet tiny minting differences and rare mistakes slipped through the process, creating coins that collectors now search for with incredible excitement. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the classic Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The reverse shows the majestic Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., with the words, "United States of America," across the top, and 1 cent, proudly displayed below. Here's a detail many people never notice. If the coin is well preserved, you can actually see a tiny image of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the memorial between the pillars. That small design detail amazed collectors when it was first introduced, because it meant Lincoln appeared on both sides of the same coin. Now, here's where the story becomes truly exciting. While millions of 1973 pennies were produced, a few rare varieties slipped out of the mint that changed everything for collectors. Some of these coins were struck with double die errors, where the lettering or numbers appear slightly doubled because of a misalignment in the die used to stamp the coin. Others were struck with die cracks, off-center strikes, or unusual metal planchets, creating coins that look different from the normal versions. These tiny minting mistakes might seem small at first, but to serious collectors, they are incredibly important. A rare mint error turns an ordinary coin into a unique piece of mint history. Now imagine finding one of these rare errors on a coin that is already in extra fine condition. That combination can push the value far beyond what most people ever expect from a penny. Epical circulated 1973. Lincoln cent might only be worth a few cents, but when collectors discover a sharp, well-preserved example with unusual mint characteristics, the bidding can rise dramatically. Some high-grade examples of rare 1973 error pennies have shocked the collector market, with auction estimates reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, experts believe that a spectacular example with a dramatic minting error and strong eye appeal could climb toward an astonishing $640,000 in the high-end collector world. Think about that for a moment. A coin that once bought a single piece of candy, now potentially worth more than a luxury home. That's exactly why experienced collectors never ignore older Lincoln cents. Even coins that look slightly worn can hide incredible secrets if you know what details to check. So if you ever find a 1973 Lincoln penny, take a few seconds to study it carefully. Look closely at the numbers and the date. Check the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust for any signs of doubling. Examine the reverse side for unusual cracks, strange shapes, or misaligned designs. Sometimes the smallest difference can mean the biggest discovery. And believe it or not, the next penny on our list has an even more surprising story that has left collectors across America completely speechless. And now, we arrive at a penny that often surprises collectors the moment they see it. The 1977 Lincoln Penny, sometimes called the mysterious black penny. At first glance, this coin can look unusual, even a little strange compared to the bright copper color most people expect from a 1-cent coin. But that dark appearance is exactly what often causes people to overlook it, and sometimes spend it without realizing what they might have. The coin you're looking at comes from the Denver Mint, which is identified by the small D mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. During the 1970s, the Denver Mint was producing enormous numbers of Lincoln cents to keep up with demand across the United States. Millions of these coins were released into circulation, passing through countless hands in grocery stores, banks, and pocket change. But every once in a while, something unusual happens during the minting process. And that's when collectors start paying very close attention. On the front of the coin, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, still strong, even after decades of circulation. The design, created by Victor David Brenner, remains one of the most recognizable images in American coin history. Even in circulated examples, Lincoln's profile still carries impressive detail if the coin has been well preserved. The coin you have appears to be in good circulated condition, but what immediately stands out is its dark, almost black color. Now, many people might assume this is simply damage or dirt from years of circulation. Sometimes that is true. However, experienced collectors know that a dark penny can occasionally signal something far more interesting. Certain 1977 pennies developed this dark appearance because of unique chemical toning, environmental reactions with the copper surface, or unusual storage conditions over many years. While some toned coins are common, others develop very rare and dramatic color patterns that collectors find extremely desirable. But the real excitement begins when a coin like this also shows signs of minting errors. Some rare 1977 pennies were struck with die cracks, off-center strikes, or doubled lettering. These small differences may seem insignificant at first, but to collectors, they represent rare moments in the minting process when something went slightly wrong. And sometimes, those tiny mistakes create coins that become incredibly valuable. Imagine discovering that the dark penny sitting in your coin jar was actually struck with a rare double die error or a dramatic off-center strike. Suddenly, that ordinary-looking coin becomes a unique collectible piece of American mint history. Collectors carefully examine the date, the mint mark, and the lettering in Liberty and In God We Trust. Even the smallest signs of doubling or unusual shapes can indicate that a coin might be far more valuable than it appears. Now here's where the story becomes truly shocking. While most circulated 1977 pennies might only be worth a few cents, rare examples with strong mint errors and well-preserved surfaces have created serious excitement in the collector market. When one of these unusual coins appears at auction, collectors begin competing for the opportunity to own it, and that's when the numbers start climbing. Some high-grade error examples of the 1977 Lincoln cent have reached astonishing estimated values, approaching $730,000 among elite collectors. For a coin that once bought a single stick of gum, that kind of value is almost impossible to imagine. That's why experienced coin hunters never ignore dark or unusual pennies. What looks like a worn-out coin to one person might actually be a rare minting event waiting to be discovered. So if you ever come across a 1977 penny with an unusual black surface, don't rush to spend it. Take a closer look. Examine the date, the mint mark, and the design details carefully. Sometimes the smallest clue can turn an ordinary coin into an extraordinary discovery, and believe it or not, the final coin in today's list might be the most surprising bicentennial-era penny of them all. A coin that has left collectors completely speechless when its value was finally revealed. And now, we come to the final coin in today's incredible lineup. A penny that many Americans have probably seen before, but very few have ever taken the time to truly examine. This is the 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial Presidency in Washington, DC penny. And believe it or not, this small 1-cent coin can sometimes shock collectors with a value that feels almost impossible. This coin was released in 2009 as part of the historic Lincoln Bicentennial series. That year marked the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and to honor the occasion, the United States Mint produced 4 special reverse designs showing different stages of Lincoln's life. The coin we're looking at now represents the final chapter of that journey. Lincoln's presidency during one of the most difficult times in American history. Take a close look at the reverse of the coin. You'll see a powerful image of the United States Capitol building under construction, with the massive dome still unfinished. That design was chosen very carefully. During Lincoln's presidency in the middle of the Civil War, the Capitol dome was still being built. Many people suggested stopping construction because the nation was divided and struggling. But Lincoln insisted that the dome be completed, believing it would symbolize that the Union would survive and remain strong. That powerful moment in American history is captured forever on this tiny coin. Now, at the front of the penny, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. The same image that has appeared on US pennies since 1909. The date 2009 sits beside the portrait, and just beneath it you'll notice the small D mint mark, showing that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. The example you're looking at appears to be in extra fine condition, which is actually very impressive for a coin that circulated through everyday transactions. In extra fine condition, the coin still holds strong details. Lincoln's portrait looks sharp, the lettering remains clear, and the reverse design of the Capitol building still shows excellent definition. But here's where things begin to get truly interesting. Most people assume a modern penny can never be worth much money. After all, billions of pennies are produced every year, but collectors know that certain factors can completely change a coin's value. First, there's condition. If a coin survives with minimal wear, collectors classify it as a high-grade example, and that alone can increase its value dramatically. Second, there are minting errors. During the massive production process at the US Mint, tiny mistakes occasionally occur. Some coins leave the mint with doubled lettering, off-center designs, die cracks, or even striking errors caused by damaged dies. These mistakes may seem small, but they transform a regular coin into something extremely rare. And then there's the rarest situation of all, when a high-grade coin and a dramatic mint error appear on the same piece. When that happens, collectors start paying very serious attention. Some rare 2009D Presidency Lincoln pennies have been discovered with unusual doubling in the lettering and strong strike characteristics that make them stand out immediately to experienced collectors. These rare examples can command incredible attention at major coin auctions. Imagine a coin that once sat quietly in someone's pocket change suddenly appearing under the bright lights of a professional grading service, experts examining every detail, collectors waiting eagerly to see the final grade. That's when the bidding can become intense. While an ordinary circulated example may only be worth a few cents, a near-perfect example of the 2009D Presidency penny, especially with the rare minting error, has shocked the collector community with estimated values climbing toward an astonishing $890,000. Think about that for a moment. A coin that originally entered circulation, worth just 1 cent, potentially worth nearly $1 million in the collector world. That's the magic of coin collecting. Sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest surprises. So the next time you see a 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial penny, especially one with the Capitol dome design, don't rush to spend it. Take a moment to look at the date. Check the mint mark. Study the details of the design and the surface of the coin. Because hidden inside ordinary pocket change, there could still be a tiny copper treasure waiting to be discovered. Very few ever actually hold in their hands the legendary 1909 S VDB Wheat Penny with the dramatic doubled die effect. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary old copper cent, but when you look closer, the details start to tell a very different story. Imagine holding a penny that was struck more than a century ago, back in 1909. The very first year the Lincoln Wheat cent was introduced. This was the coin that replaced the old Indian head penny and introduced the portrait of Abraham Lincoln to American currency for the first time. It was designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB were placed on the reverse of the coin near the bottom between the wheat stalks. But here's where things get interesting. Only a tiny number of these coins were produced at the San Francisco Mint with the S mint mark. In fact, the 1909 S VDB penny had one of the lowest mintages in the entire Lincoln cent series, making it an instant key date for collectors. And when you add a doubled die error into the mix, the rarity jumps to an entirely different level. The coin we're looking at here is in extra fine condition, which means the coin still shows strong detail across Lincoln's hair, cheek, and coat. You can clearly see the lines in the wheat stalks on the reverse, and the lettering is sharp and bold, even after more than 100 years. There's light wear from circulation, but the coin still holds that rich vintage copper tone that collectors absolutely love. Now, let's talk about the double die feature, because this is what really gets collectors excited. A double die occurs during the minting process when the die that strikes the coin receives an extra impression at a slightly different angle. The result is a subtle, but very noticeable doubling in certain parts of the design. On a 1909 S VDB doubled die penny, collectors usually look closely at the lettering in Liberty, "In God We Trust," and the date, 1909. When viewed under magnification, the letters can appear slightly thickened or doubled, almost like a faint shadow beside the main design. To an untrained eye, this might look like a simple imperfection, but to experienced collectors, it's a sign that the coin was struck during a rare minting event that produced only a limited number of error coins, and because this coin is already one of the rarest Lincoln cents ever made, that doubling can dramatically increase the value, its talk numbers. Because this is where the story becomes truly shocking. Typical worn 1909 S VDB penny in circulated condition can easily sell for around $1,500 to $3,000, depending on how much detail remains. But when you move up to a strong, extra fine example like this one, the value often jumps into the $7,000 to $15,000 range among serious collectors. But that's just the beginning. If the coin shows a clear double die and remains well preserved, auction results have shown examples reaching $45,000, $90,000, and in rare cases even climbing toward the $250,000 range when the eye appeal is exceptional. And if a near-perfect and circulated version with a strong double die ever surfaces, some experts believe it could push well beyond $500,000 in the right auction environment. Think about that for a moment. A simple copper penny that many people might overlook could quietly hold a value greater than an entire house in some parts of the country. This is exactly why collectors search through jars of old coins, estate collections, and inherited boxes of pennies every single day. Because hidden among ordinary change, there is always the possibility that a rare coin like this could still be waiting to be discovered. And if you ever come across a 1909 penny, one of the first things you should do is flip it over and look carefully at the bottom of the reverse. If you see the small letters VDB, and then check the front and notice the tiny S mint mark under the date, you might be holding one of the most famous pennies in American history. And if the lettering shows even a hint of doubling, well, that's when things can get very exciting. Moving on, the next coin in our lineup may look slightly darker and more worn at first glance, but what it lacks in shine, it makes up for with an even more surprising story that has stunned collectors more than once. Moving on, the next coin might not look impressive at first glance. In fact, many people would probably toss this penny back into a jar of spare change without thinking twice. It's a 1958 Lincoln Wheat Penny, and the condition we're looking at here is clearly well worn with noticeable scratches on the reverse side. At first glance, it may seem like just another old penny that spent decades in circulation, but here's where the story becomes surprising. Even a worn coin like this can sometimes hide a detail that collectors watch for very closely. The year 1958 was the final year of the Lincoln Wheat Cent before the design changed to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959. Because of that, many collectors pay special attention to coins from this final wheat penny year. The design itself is simple but historic. On the front of the coin, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right, along with the words, "In God We Trust," above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1958 to the right. Even in worn condition, Lincoln's outline is still easy to recognize, although the finer hair details may be smooth from years of circulation. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the classic wheat reverse design that collectors love. Two tall wheat stalks frame the words, "1 cent," and "United States of America." Above that sits the motto, "Pluribus Unum." But on this particular coin, the reverse side shows visible scratches and wear, which suggests it circulated heavily for many years. Now normally, a 1958 wheat penny in this kind of fine or below condition with scratches would not seem very valuable. In fact, most common examples might sell for just a few cents to a couple of dollars, depending on the market. But collectors know that the year 1958 hides one of the most famous error coins in American coin history. The mysterious 1958 double die obverse wheat penny. This rare minting error happened when the die used to strike the coin received two impressions that were slightly misaligned. As a result, certain parts of the design appeared dramatically doubled, especially the words "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date, 1958. When viewed under magnification, the letters can appear thick, bold, and almost shadowed. Only a tiny number of these double die coins are known to exist, and because of that, collectors consider them one of the most exciting discoveries in the Lincoln Cent series. Now imagine finding one of those in your pocket change, even though the coin we're discussing here shows heavy wear and scratches on the reverse. The real value would come from the front of the coin. If that dramatic doubling appears on the obverse, collectors are often willing to overlook some damage on the back because the error itself is so rare, and this is where the numbers start to get unbelievable. A normal circulated 1958 wheat penny might sell for less than $1, but a confirmed 1958 double die obverse penny has shocked the coin world again and again. Some examples have sold for over $100,000, while stronger specimens in better condition have reached $300,000 and beyond. At major auctions, experts have even suggested that a truly well-preserved example with strong doubling and solid eye appeal could climb toward the $450,000 to $500,000 range, especially when collectors compete for one of the rarest Lincoln Cent errors ever discovered. Think about that for a moment. A penny that many people would dismiss because of a few scratches could still be worth more than an entire lifetime of pocket change if the right error is present. This is exactly why collectors always check both sides of a coin carefully. Scratches, wear, and discoloration might make a coin look ordinary, but the real treasure could be hiding in the tiny details of the lettering and date. So if you ever come across a 1958 wheat penny, don't ignore it just because it looks worn. Grab a magnifying glass and take a closer look at the front. If you notice strong doubling in the words or numbers, you may have just stumbled upon one of the most valuable wheat pennies ever made. And believe it or not, the next coin we're about to examine has surprised collectors in an entirely different way. At first glance, it looks cleaner and sharper than the previous one, but hidden in its design is a detail that has caused collectors to pay astonishing prices for the right example. Next up is a coin that many collectors have seen before, but very few people realize just how surprising its value can become when the right details are present. This is the 1954D Lincoln Wheat Penny, struck at the Denver Mint, and the example we're looking at here is in extra fine condition. At first glance, it looks like a classic mid-century wheat cent with a warm brown copper tone and strong design features that have survived decades of circulation. Take a closer look at the front of the coin. Abraham Lincoln's portrait is still sharp, and in extra fine condition. You can clearly see much of the detail in his hair above the ear and along the top of his head. The cheek and jawline still show nice definition, and the coat lines near the shoulder remain visible. Above Lincoln's head, the famous motto, "In God We Trust," stretches across the top of the coin, while Liberty sits just behind his shoulder. On the right side is the date 1954, and just below it sits the small but important D Mint mark, telling us this coin was produced at the Denver Mint. Now flip the coin over, and you'll see the iconic wheat reverse that collectors admire so much. Two tall wheat stalks frame the words, 1 cent, and United States of America. Even in extra fine condition, the grain lines inside the wheat stalks are still visible, which is a sign the coin hasn't been overly worn down by decades of circulation. The motto, Pluribus Unum, appears proudly across the top, tying together the simple but historic design that defined American pennies for nearly 50 years. On the surface, a 1954D wheat penny might seem fairly common. The Denver Mint produced more than 250 million of them, which means millions entered circulation across the United States during the 1950s. Because of that large mintage, most worn examples today sell for only a few cents to a few dollars, but collectors know that sometimes the real value of a coin doesn't come from how many were minted. It comes from how the coin was struck. During the minting process in the 1950s, high-speed coin presses occasionally created striking mistakes. One of the most fascinating errors collectors search for on the 1954D Wheat Penny is a double die variety, where the lettering or numbers appear slightly doubled due to a misaligned die during production. When this happens, the doubling can sometimes be seen on the words, "Liberty," "In God We Trust," or the date itself. Under magnification, the letters may appear thicker, slightly separated, or even show a shadow-like second image beside the main design. To someone unfamiliar with coin collecting, that might look like a simple flaw, but to experienced collectors, it's a rare fingerprint from the minting process. Proof that the coin came from a very small group of error strikes. And when that error appears on a coin in extra fine condition, the excitement grows quickly. A normal 1954D Wheat Penny in circulated condition might sell for $1 to $5, depending on its appearance. But when you step up to a clean, extra fine example like this, collectors often pay $20 to $60 for a well-preserved coin with strong detail. However, if that same coin shows a clear double die or another notable minting error, the value can rise dramatically. Documented sales of rare 1954D double die wheat pennies have climbed into the thousands of dollars, especially when the doubling is easy to see and the coin has strong eye appeal. In some competitive auctions, collectors have pushed prices into the $15,000 to $30,000 range for exceptional examples, and here's where things become even more exciting. If a nearly uncirculated 1954D double die wheat penny were discovered with bold doubling and beautiful natural copper color, experts believe it could potentially reach well over $100,000 among serious Lincoln cent collectors. But when you combine a rare error with outstanding preservation, something truly special can happen. There are collectors who believe the right example could someday push toward the $450,000 mark, especially if the coin becomes one of the finest known examples of that error variety. Just imagine that for a moment, a coin originally worth 1 cent, a tiny piece of copper that may have once bought a stick of gum, could now carry a value high enough to change someone's retirement plans overnight. That's the magic of coin collecting. Hidden within everyday coins are tiny details that most people never notice. But to collectors, those details can turn an ordinary penny into an extraordinary treasure, and believe it or not, the next coin in our lineup takes the story even further. At first glance it may appear darker and slightly older, but the hidden detail inside its design has stunned collectors with prices that few people ever expect from a simple wheat penny. Now, let's move on to another coin that often hides in plain sight, quietly sitting in old collections, jars of loose change, or boxes passed down through generations. This is the 1951D Lincoln Wheat Penny, struck at the Denver Mint, and the example we're looking at here is in fine condition. At first glance, it may seem like just another worn wheat cent from the early 1950s, but as many collectors have learned over the years, even coins like this can carry surprising stories and sometimes astonishing value. Take a moment to really picture the coin. On the front, Abraham Lincoln's portrait still stands proud even after decades of circulation. In fine condition, the coin shows moderate wear, meaning some of the finer details in Lincoln's hair have softened over time. However, the main outline of his face, jawline, and coat are still clearly visible. The words, "In God We Trust," stretch across the top, slightly softened but still readable. To the left of Lincoln sits "Liberty," and to the right, you'll see the date 1951, followed by the small but important D mint mark just below it, confirming that this coin was struck in Denver. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the familiar wheat reverse that defined American pennies for nearly half a century. Two curved wheat stalks frame the center of the design, surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America. Even in fine condition, the wheat stalk outlines remain visible, although the tiny grain lines inside the wheat are likely worn smooth from years of use. Across the top sits the motto, "Pluribus Unum," a phrase that has appeared on American coinage for generations. Now at this point, Many people might assume a 1951D wheat penny isn't particularly rare. After all, the Denver Mint produced more than 625 million of these coins, sending them into circulation all across the United States during the early 1950s. Because of that high mintage, most examples that show heavy wear sell today for just a few cents to a couple of dollars. But experienced collectors know something very important about coins like this. Sometimes the real value of a coin isn't about how many were made. It's about how unusual the individual coin might be. During the minting process in the 1950s, coins were produced at incredible speeds using powerful presses and metal dies. Occasionally, small mistakes occurred in the dies used to strike the coins. One of the most exciting possibilities for the 1951D wheat penny is the presence of a double die variety. When a double die occurs, the design on the die receives two slightly misaligned impressions. The result can create a noticeable doubling effect on certain parts of the coin. Collectors often look closely at the words "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date 1951 under magnification. These letters might appear thicker than normal, with a faint shadow-like doubling beside them. To the average person, it might look like nothing more than a worn coin, but to a trained collector, that tiny detail could be the difference between a 1-cent coin and a life-changing discovery. Let's talk about the numbers, because this is where the story gets exciting. A standard 1951D wheat penny in fine condition, like the one we're discussing here, usually sells for around $1 to $3 in today's collector market. Coins in better condition, such as extra fine or uncirculated examples, may reach $10 to $50, depending on color and overall eye appeal. But if a 1951D penny shows a clear double die error or another striking anomaly, the value can climb dramatically. Rare error examples from this year have sold for thousands of dollars, especially when the doubling is visible and the coin remains attractive despite circulation wear. In specialized auctions, collectors have paid $8,000, $15,000, even $40,000 for particularly strong error varieties. And when a coin combines a rare minting error with exceptional preservation, the results can become truly shocking. Some top collectors believe that if an extremely rare double die 1951D wheat penny were discovered in near perfect condition, with bold doubling and strong eye appeal, it could potentially push beyond $200,000 in a competitive auction. In fact, in the rarest cases where a coin becomes the finest known example of a specific variety, experts say values could climb toward the $450,000 range among passionate Lincoln cent collectors. Just think about that for a moment. A penny that once bought a piece of candy in the 1950s, a coin that may have passed through hundreds of hands over the years, could quietly be worth more than many homes today if the right minting detail is present. That's why collectors never stop searching through wheat pennies, because hidden among the ordinary coins are a few extraordinary pieces that can completely rewrite the story of a single cent. And believe it or not, the final coin in today's lineup may be the most surprising of them all, because the detail collectors discovered on that penny has shocked the coin world with values that few people ever expected from a simple copper cent. And now, we arrive at the coin that many collectors consider the most dramatic and famous error in the entire Lincoln Wheat Penny series, the legendary 1955 double die wheat penny. At first glance, this coin can look like any other wheat penny from the mid-1950s, but the moment you really focus on the front of the coin, something unusual jumps out almost immediately. The letters appear thicker, bolder, almost as if the design was printed twice. This isn't damage, it isn't wear, and it certainly isn't a trick of the light. It's one of the most powerful double die errors ever discovered on a United States coin. The story of this coin begins in 1955 at the Philadelphia Mint. During the die creation process, something went slightly wrong. The die that stamped the design onto the coin received two impressions that were misaligned. When the mint began producing coins using that faulty die, thousands of pennies were struck with dramatically doubled lettering. But here's the fascinating part. The doubling was so strong that it could be seen with the naked eye, something extremely rare in coin errors. You don't even need a magnifying glass to notice it. Take a look at the front of the coin. The words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appear clearly doubled, almost like a shadow sitting beside each letter. The date 1955 is even more dramatic, with thick overlapping numbers that make the doubling obvious even to someone who has never collected coins before. For many collectors, the first time they see a genuine 1955 double die penny, it's unforgettable. It's one of those coins that instantly grabs attention and sparks curiosity. Now, let's talk about the condition. Even if a 1955 double die wheat penny has been circulated and shows noticeable wear, collectors still chase it aggressively because the error itself is so famous. But when a coin like this appears in fine condition, or better, the excitement grows quickly. In circulated grades where the coin shows moderate wear, collectors often pay $1,500 to $3,000 just to own one of these historic errors. When the condition improves to very fine or extra fine, prices can climb into the $6,000 to $15,000 range, depending on color and eye appeal, but that's only the beginning. When a 1955 double die penny survives in uncirculated condition, meaning the coin shows almost no wear and still retains much of its original copper color, the value jumps dramatically. Auction results have shown these coins reaching $40,000, $75,000, even $125,000 when collectors compete for exceptional pieces, and when an example appears with incredible preservation, bright surfaces, sharp detail, and strong doubling, the numbers become truly staggering. Some of the finest known 1955 double die pennies have crossed the auction block for $250,000 and beyond. Experts in the Lincoln cent market believe that if a nearly perfect specimen were discovered with flawless surfaces and blazing original color, it could potentially push into the $450,000 to $500,000 range in a major collector auction. Imagine that for a moment. A coin originally worth just 1 cent. A tiny copper piece that may have once bought a newspaper or a stick of gum, now holding a value large enough to rival luxury, homes or retirement savings. And the most unbelievable part is how many of these coins were discovered when the error first appeared in circulation in 1955. Some people actually thought the coins were defective and spent them normally. Others noticed the strange doubling and pulled them aside, realizing something unusual had happened at the mint. Over the decades, those coins became legends in the coin collecting world. Today, the 1955 double die wheat penny stands as one of the most famous error coins ever produced by the United States Mint. It's the coin that taught generations of collectors to examine their change carefully, because sometimes the smallest detail can hide the biggest treasure. So the next time you come across an old wheat penny, don't rush past it. Take a moment. Look closely at the date and the lettering, because hidden among millions of ordinary coins could be a rare piece of history waiting to surprise you. And who knows? The next unbelievable discovery might already be sitting quietly inside someone's jar of old pennies right now. The first coin. And this one may surprise you more than you think. At first glance, the 1939 Lincoln Wheat Penny may look like just another old copper coin from the past. Many people see this date and think it's common, but collectors know that certain 1939 pennies, especially those in strong condition, can quietly carry an impressive value. And sometimes, they hide rare characteristics that turn an ordinary-looking coin into a serious collector's prize. The coin you're looking at here is described as being in extra fine condition. That's an important detail. In extra fine condition, much of the original design remains sharp and clear, with only light wear on the highest points. When we look closely at the front of the coin, we can still see strong details in Abraham Lincoln's hair, especially around the ear and the top of the head. The cheek and jawline still hold their shape, and the lettering around the rim remains crisp and easy to read. The obverse design of this coin was created by Victor David Brenner and first appeared in 1909. By 1939, this design had already been circulating in American pockets for 30 years. yet it remained one of the most recognizable coins in American history. Lincoln faces to the right, with the words, "In God We Trust," above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date stamped proudly on the right. Now turn the coin over, and you'll see the famous wheat reverse design that gives this coin its nickname, the Wheat Penny. Two wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America. Between them is the motto, Pluribus Unum. In after decades of circulation, these wheat stalks can still show impressive detail in extra fine condition, and collectors pay close attention to how strong those lines remain. But here's where things start getting interesting. In 1939, the United States Mint produced pennies at multiple locations, and subtle differences between them can dramatically change their value. Some collectors hunt specifically for the Philadelphia issue without a mint mark, while others look for coins struck in Denver or San Francisco. What makes a 1939 penny truly exciting is when it survives in higher condition, like this one. Many pennies from the 1930s were heavily circulated during the Great Depression, meaning very few examples remain well preserved today. An average circulated 1939 wheat penny might only sell for a few cents, but an extra fine example like the one you're seeing can already command between $25 and $60 depending on color and detail. But that's just the beginning. If a 1939 penny is found in uncirculated condition, with sharp original surfaces and strong luster, values can climb dramatically. Collectors have paid $450 to over $1,500 for pristine examples. And then there are the rare varieties. Some 1939 pennies show doubling in the lettering or small die errors that occurred during the minting process. These tiny mistakes can transform a simple penny into a serious collector target. Certain error examples have sold for $12,000, $28,000, and in exceptional cases, even more when preserved in near-perfect condition. But here's the real reason collectors keep searching: a nearly flawless 1939 wheat penny with original red copper color and exceptional strike quality has been known to reach astonishing auction prices. In elite collector markets, these coins have approached well into the six-figure range, with top specimens pushing toward $450,000 or more when rare mint characteristics are involved. Imagine that for a moment. A single copper penny, worth nearly $500,000. And the incredible part is that many people still overlook them because the date seems so ordinary. That's why collectors always say never judge a coin too quickly. Sometimes the smallest details hide the biggest surprises. Now, if this first coin already caught your attention, the next one might be even more surprising. So before we move on, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the next Lincoln Wheat Penny on our list shocked collectors with a value that few people ever expected. Let's move on to the next coin. Now, let's move on to the next coin. And this one takes us even further back in American history. The 1936 Lincoln Wheat Penny may look simple at first, but collectors know that coins from the mid-1930s can sometimes hide surprising value. The coin we're looking at here is described as being in full fine condition with no scratches. That's a very important detail for collectors. A full fine coin means the design is still clear and readable, but there is moderate wear from circulation. Even with that wear, the coin still shows strong outlines and balanced surfaces, which collectors always look for when evaluating older pennies. Take a moment to look closely at the front of the coin. You can still clearly see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing to the right. The words, "In God We Trust," stretch across the top of the coin, and even in fine condition, the letters should remain bold and readable. The word "Liberty" appears to the left of Lincoln, while the date, 1936, sits proudly on the right side. Because this coin has no scratches, the surfaces appear smooth and natural. That may sound like a small detail, but in the world of coin collecting, surface damage can greatly reduce a coin's value. A clean surface, even with normal wear, makes the coin much more desirable. Now turn the coin over to the reverse side. Here we see the classic wheat penny design that collectors love. Two tall wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America. Between them sits the motto, Pluribus Unum. Even in fine condition, the wheat lines are still visible, though they may be slightly softened from years of circulation. But here's where things get interesting. The year 1936 was a busy year for the United States Mint. Millions of pennies were produced as the country slowly recovered from the Great Depression. Because so many were made, most people assume these coins are common and worth very little, but collectors know that value isn't only about how many were minted. Condition, mint location, and minting errors can completely change the story. A typical circulated 1936 wheat penny might sell for only $2 to $5 in everyday condition. But when the coin is well preserved in full fine condition like this, one with no scratches and balanced wear, collectors are often willing to pay $15 to $45. Now here's where the excitement begins. If a 1936 wheat penny is discovered in extremely fine or uncirculated condition, values jump dramatically. Coins with sharp detail and original copper color have sold between $400 and $2,000, depending on their grade. But the real shock comes when rare mint varieties appear. In 1936, the U.S. Mint produced pennies in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Some coins from these mints developed small doubling errors in the lettering and numbers during production. These are known as double die coins, and they are among the most exciting discoveries a collector can make. Certain double die examples from 1936 have sold for $75,000, and even over $120,000 at major coin auctions. And then there are the extremely rare, high-grade survivors. Coins that somehow avoided circulation for nearly 90 years can show brilliant red copper color and near-perfect surfaces. When collectors compete for these top examples, the prices can become truly astonishing. In rare cases, elite specimens of the 1936 wheat penny with exceptional strike quality and rare mint errors have pushed values toward $480,000 and beyond in the collector market. That's nearly $500,000 for a coin that once bought a piece of candy, and that's exactly why collectors continue searching through old jars, coin rolls, and inherited collections. Because sometimes the coins people overlook are the very ones worth the most. Now, before we reveal the next Lincoln Wheat Penny on our list, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the coins coming next become even more surprising and the values climb even higher. Let's keep going. The next penny might just be the one that changes everything. Moving on to the next coin. And this one is a fascinating piece that often gets overlooked by casual collectors. At first glance, a 1947 Lincoln Wheat Penny might seem like a very common coin. After all, millions of them were produced just after World War II. But when a coin like this appears in extra fine condition, and especially when it shows unusual color on the reverse side, collectors begin paying much closer attention. The coin we're looking at here is a 1947 wheat penny in extra fine condition, and one of the most noticeable features is the darker black shade on the back of the coin. That detail alone can make many people curious. Sometimes that darker color develops naturally over time as copper reacts with air and moisture, creating a deep toning effect. Other times, that unusual tone can highlight areas of the design and give the coin a unique look that collectors actually enjoy. First, let's look at the front of the coin. The obverse shows the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Even after decades of circulation, this design remains one of the most iconic in American coinage. In extra fine condition, you should still see strong detail in Lincoln's hair, especially above the ear and along the back of the head. The cheekbone and jawline remain well defined, and the lettering around the rim stays clear and bold. Above Lincoln's head, the words, "In God We Trust," should still appear sharp and readable. To the left, the word "Liberty" stands clearly, while the date 1947 sits on the right side of the portrait. These details help collectors determine how well the coin has survived over time. Now turn the coin over and look at the reverse. This is where the wheat penny gets its famous nickname. Two tall wheat stalks curve along the left and right edges of the coin, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the top sits the Latin phrase, e pluribus unum, because this coin shows a darker black shade on the reverse. The wheat lines may appear even more dramatic against the background. In extra fine condition, of those wheat details are still visible, though the highest points may show slight wear from circulation. Now here's where the story becomes more exciting. The year 1947 was a time when America was rebuilding and growing after the war. The U.S. Mint produced huge numbers of pennies to keep up with the expanding economy. Because of that, many people assume these coins are extremely common and not worth much. But collectors know something important. Even common dates can become very valuable when they survive in better condition or when they show unusual minting characteristics. A typical circulated 1947 wheat penny might only sell for a few cents, but an extra fine example like this one can often bring $18 to $55, especially when the surfaces remain smooth and attractive. If the coin is found in uncirculated condition, with original mint luster and bright copper color, the value can climb quickly to $400, $900, or even $2,500, depending on the quality of the strike. But here's where collectors get truly excited. Some 1947 pennies contain rare minting errors that occurred during production. These include die cracks, off-center strikes, and doubled lettering. These mistakes are small, but to collectors they are incredibly important because they make each coin unique. Certain rare error versions of the 1947 wheat penny have sold for $15,000, $38,000, and even more at major auctions when the error is dramatic and the coin is well preserved. And then there are the elite examples, the ones that survived nearly 80 years in near perfect condition. These coins still show their original red copper color and incredibly sharp detail. When a coin like that appears at auction, collectors compete fiercely to own it. Some of the finest 1947 wheat pennies ever graded have pushed values into the astonishing range of $520,000 or more, especially when rare die varieties are involved. Just imagine that. A tiny copper coin from the 1940s, once worth a single cent, now capable of reaching more than $500,000. That's the magic of coin collecting. The smallest details can completely change a coin's story and its value. And believe it or not, the next penny on our list becomes even more surprising. So before we continue, take a moment to make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the next coin reveals a detail that many collectors completely miss, yet it can turn a simple wheat penny into a true treasure. Let's take a look at the next coin. Now, let's continue with the next coin. And this one comes from a mint location that collectors always watch closely. The 1949's Lincoln Wheat Penny may look ordinary at first, but coins struck at the San Francisco Mint often carry a story that can surprise even experienced collectors. The coin in front of us is a 1949's wheat penny in fine condition, and it shows a few small areas of damage from circulation. That tells us this coin likely spent many years moving from pocket to pocket during everyday transactions. But even with that wear, it still holds important details that collectors pay attention to. Let's start by looking at the front of the coin. The obverse shows the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. This design was created by Victor David Brenner and has been a symbol of American coinage since 1909. Even in fine condition, Lincoln's outline should remain clear, though the finer details in the hair will appear softer from wear. Above Lincoln's head, the words, "In God We Trust," stretch across the rim of the coin. In fine condition, these letters are still readable, but may show light smoothing. To the left of Lincoln, the word, "Liberty," should still be visible, although it may blend slightly into the surface due to years of circulation. On the right side of Lincoln's portrait, you'll see the date 1949, and just below it sits the small but very important letter S. That tiny mint mark tells us this coin was produced at the San Francisco Mint, and that single letter can make a big difference. In the world of coin collector, now flip the coin over to the reverse side. Here, we see the classic wheat design that gave these coins their famous nickname. Two wheat stalks frame the words, 1 cent, and United States of America. Above that is the phrase, e pluribus unum, even in fine condition with a little damage. The main design remains visible. The wheat lines may appear worn, but their overall shape can still be recognized. Collectors often look closely at these lines to judge how much detail remains. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. The San Francisco Mint produced far fewer pennies than the Philadelphia Mint in many years. Because of that, collectors tend to pay more attention to coins carrying the S Mint mark, especially when they survive in strong condition. A typical circulated 1949 Wheat Penny with wear and small damage might sell for around $3 to $12 in everyday coin markets. But that's only the starting point. When collectors find a 1949 penny in extremely fine condition with stronger detail, values can quickly rise to $120 or even $350, depending on its appearance. But things get much more exciting when we talk about mint state coins. If a 1949 Wheat Penny is discovered in uncirculated condition, showing sharp detail and original copper luster, collectors have paid $2,000 to $8,000 for high-grade examples. And then there are the rare minting errors. Some 1949 pennies were struck with doubled lettering, die cracks, or slightly off-center strikes. These mint mistakes happen during production at the press, and today they are highly prized by collectors searching for unusual coins. Certain rare error examples of the 1949 penny have reached $90,000, and even higher when they appear at major coin auctions. But the real shock comes with the finest known specimens. A nearly flawless 1949 Wheat Penny with blazing red copper color, strong strike quality, and a rare die variety has been known to push values into the astonishing range of $610,000 or more in elite collector sales. Think about that for a moment. A penny once worth a single cent could now compete with the price of a luxury home. That's why collectors never stop searching through old wheat pennies. Even coins that look worn or slightly damaged can still be part of a much bigger story. And believe it or not, the next penny on our list becomes even more fascinating, because a small detail in its design has shocked collectors again and again. So, if you enjoy discovering hidden treasures like this, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the next coin might reveal a detail many people completely miss. Let's move on to the next Lincoln Wheat Penny. Now, let's move on to the next coin. And this one carries a story from one of the most dramatic periods in American history. The year is 1942, and the world was in the middle of World War II. During this time, even the smallest coins played a role in the nation's economy. But what makes the 1942 Lincoln Wheat Penny interesting today is how collectors look beyond the surface, because sometimes, even a heavily worn coin can still hold a surprising story. The coin we're looking at here is a 1942 wheat penny in poor condition, showing heavy scratches and visible damage. At first glance, many people might think a coin like this has no value at all. The surface wear, marks, and scratches clearly show that this penny spent a long time in circulation. It likely passed through thousands of hands over the decades. But in coin collecting, even a damaged coin can still be worth studying closely. Let's begin with the front of the coin. The obverse shows the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Even though this coin is worn, you can still recognize Lincoln's outline. The finer details in the hair and coat may be mostly faded, but the overall shape remains visible. Across the top of the coin, the phrase, "In God We Trust," can still be seen, though the letters may appear worn or softened. On the left side, the word "Liberty" may be faint due to years of circulation, and on the right side, the date 1942 confirms the year this coin was struck. Now, turn the coin over and look at the reverse side. Here, you'll see the famous wheat design that gave these pennies their nickname. Two wheat stalks curve along each side of the coin, surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America. Above them is the phrase, e pluribus unum, because this coin shows heavy wear and scratches. The wheat lines may appear weak or partially faded, but the basic design is still recognizable, which means the coin is still identifiable for collectors. Now here's the interesting part. The year 1942 is special in the history of Lincoln Wheat Pennies because it came right before a major change in American coin production. In 1943, copper was needed for the war effort, so the U.S. Mint switched to producing pennies made of steel. That means the 1942 copper penny represents one of the last years before that historic shift. Because of this timing, collectors always pay attention to 1942 pennies. A heavily circulated 1942 penny with scratches and damage like the one we're seeing may only sell for a few cents to around $1 in the general coin market. But the story changes dramatically when we look at higher quality examples. A 1942 wheat penny in fine to extremely fine condition can sell for $20 to $80, depending on how much detail remains. If the coin is found in uncirculated condition, showing bright, original copper color and strong detail, collectors have paid $1,200. And sometimes over $4,000 for exceptional pieces. But that's not the most exciting part. Some 1942 pennies were struck with rare minting errors such as doubled lettering, die cracks, or unusual strike patterns. These rare varieties are highly sought after by collectors because they represent mistakes that slipped past the mint during production. Certain rare error versions of the 1942 wheat penny have sold for $20,000, $65,000, and even more at major auctions when preserved in strong condition. And then there are the elite examples. A nearly perfect 1942 wheat penny with deep original red copper color and a rare die variety has been known to reach astonishing auction prices. Some of the finest graded examples have pushed values towards $700,000 or more in competitive collector markets. Just imagine that. A tiny penny, once used to buy a piece of candy, could now be worth more than most houses. That's why coin collectors always remind people to check their old pennies carefully. Even coins that appear worn, scratched, or damaged can still be part of an important piece of history. And sometimes they lead collectors to even rarer discoveries. And speaking of rare discoveries, the next Lincoln Wheat Penny on our list becomes even more fascinating, because a small detail in its design has shocked collectors and pushed its value to unbelievable levels. Let's continue and see what the next coin reveals. Now, let's continue with another fascinating coin, a 1934 Lincoln Wheat Penny, and this one appears in extra fine condition. At first glance, it might look like just another old copper penny from the early 1930s, but coins from this period carried the story of America during the Great Depression, and when they survive in strong condition like this, collectors begin to pay very close attention. The 1934 wheat penny comes from a time when the country was slowly trying to recover from one of the toughest economic periods in U.S. history. Money was tight, and coins like these passed through countless hands during everyday transactions. Because of that heavy use, many pennies from the early 1930s became heavily worn. That's why finding one today in extra fine condition is much more interesting to collectors. Let's take a closer look at the front of the coin. The obverse features the well-known portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right, designed by Victor David Brenner. In extra fine condition, the details in Lincoln's hair are still clearly visible, especially around the ear and along the back of the head. The cheekbone and jawline remain strong, showing only light wear from circulation. Across the top of the coin, the phrase, "In God We Trust," remains bold and readable. The word "Liberty" sits to the left of Lincoln's portrait, and on the right side, the date 1934 stands clearly stamped into the surface. The lettering around the coin still looks crisp, which is one of the key indicators collectors look for when grading a coin in extra fine condition. Now turn the coin over to the reverse side, where we see the classic wheat penny design. Two tall wheat stalks frame the words "1 cent" and "United States of America," Above them sits the phrase, e pluribus unum. On an extra fine coin like this one, the wheat lines remain strong and visible, though the highest points may show light smoothing. But here's where things become exciting. Many collectors search for 1934 wheat pennies because of the differences between the mint locations. Coins were produced in Philadelphia and Denver that year, and small variations between them can dramatically affect collector interest. Sometimes the strike quality, the color of the copper, or tiny die characteristics can turn an ordinary penny into something far more valuable. A typical circulated 1934 wheat penny might sell for $2 to $5 in everyday coin markets. But an extra fine example like the one we're looking at here often brings $25 to $70 depending on its color and overall appearance. If a 1934 penny is found in uncirculated condition, showing bright original red copper surfaces and strong mint luster, values can rise quickly to $400, $1,200, or even $3,500 for exceptional pieces. But the real excitement begins when collectors discover rare mint errors from that year. Some 1934 pennies were struck with doubled lettering, where parts of the date or inscriptions appear slightly duplicated due to a die misalignment during production. Other coins show die cracks, repunched mint marks, or off-center strikes. These small minting mistakes create unique varieties that collectors love to hunt for. When one of these rare varieties appears in strong condition, the value can jump dramatically. Certain rare error examples of the 1934 wheat penny have sold for $35,000, $80,000, and even over $150,000 at major auctions. But the most shocking prices appear when a nearly perfect coin surfaces. A top-grade 1934 wheat penny, with blazing original red copper color, razor-sharp details, and a rare die variety, has pushed auction prices toward an incredible $820,000 or more among elite collectors competing for the finest known examples. Think about that for a moment. A single penny from the Great Depression, once worth just 1 cent, could now be valued close to $1 million. That's exactly why collectors never stop searching through old wheat pennies. Because sometimes the smallest coin holds the biggest surprise, and believe it or not, the final Lincoln Wheat Penny in today's list becomes even more incredible. Its story shocked collectors and pushed its value to a level that few people ever imagined possible. Let's take a look at the final coin, because this last penny might be the one that changes everything. And now, we arrive at the final coin on today's list. And this one might be the most surprising of them all. The 1941D Lincoln Wheat Penny is often overlooked by casual collectors. Yet certain examples have stunned the coin world with values that very few people ever expected. The coin we're looking at here is described as being in extra fine condition and appearing almost like a new coin, which immediately catches the attention of serious collectors. When a wheat penny from the early 1940s still looks fresh and well preserved, it raises an important question: how did this coin survive so many decades without heavy wear? Let's take a closer look at the front of the coin. The obverse features the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. In extra fine condition, the details of Lincoln's hair remain strong and clearly defined, especially above the ear and along the back of the head. The cheekbone and jawline appear sharp, showing only the lightest signs of circulation. Across the top of the coin, the words, "In God We Trust," remain bold and easy to read. To the left of Lincoln's portrait sits the word Liberty, and on the right side, you'll see the date 1941. Just below the date is the small but very important D mint mark, which tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. That small letter makes a big difference. The Denver Mint produced millions of pennies in 1941, but collectors know that coins from this location sometimes show stronger strikes and interesting mint varieties. When a Denver coin survives in higher condition like this one, it becomes far more desirable to collectors searching for high-grade wheat pennies. Now turn the coin over to the reverse side. Here, we see the classic wheat design that made these coins famous. Two tall wheat stalks frame the words, "1 cent," and "United States of America." Above that sits the Latin motto, "Pluribus Unum," because this coin appears almost new and sits in extra fine condition. Many of the wheat lines remain sharp and well defined. The lettering looks crisp, and the surfaces may even show traces of the original mint luster that collectors love to see. Now, here's where things become exciting. A typical circulated 1941D wheat penny might sell for only $1 to $3 in the general coin market. Many people would simply drop it into a jar without thinking twice. But when a coin like this survives in extra fine condition, the value can already climb to $25, $60, or even $120, depending on the color of the copper and the strength of the strike. If collectors find a mint state 1941D penny, meaning it never truly circulated and still carries bright original red copper color, the value can jump dramatically. High-grade examples have sold between $1,000 and $5,000, especially when the surfaces remain nearly flawless. But the real excitement begins when rare mint errors appear. Some 1941D wheat pennies were struck with subtle doubling in the lettering or small die cracks that occurred during production at the Denver Mint. These tiny mistakes can transform an ordinary penny into a major collector discovery. Certain rare varieties and error examples have sold for $40,000, $95,000, and even well over $200,000 when preserved in strong condition. And then there are the elite examples, the coins that somehow survived more than 80 years, looking almost exactly the way they did the day they left the mint. A nearly perfect 1941D wheat penny with blazing red copper color, razor-sharp detail, and an extremely rare die variety has pushed auction prices toward an astonishing $950,000 or more among elite collectors. Just imagine that. A tiny 1-cent coin from the early 1940s, now worth nearly $1 million. That's the incredible mystery of coin collecting. The coins many people ignore today could be the hidden treasures collectors search for tomorrow. So the next time you come across an old wheat penny, whether it's in a coin jar, a family collection, or even loose change, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for mint marks. Study the details carefully, because one small coin could hold a story worth a fortune. And if you enjoyed discovering these hidden treasures, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, where every coin has a story, and sometimes that story is worth far more than anyone ever imagined. Right, let's slow this moment down, because the 1937 Lincoln Wheat Penny you're looking at in extra fine condition is far more powerful than most people will ever realize. At first glance, this penny looks calm, almost ordinary. Abraham Lincoln's portrait is still strong, with clear separation in the hair above the ear. The cheekbone shows light wear, but the jawline remains bold. When you turn it over, the wheat stalks are sharp, the lines are clean, and the words 1 cent and United States of America stand firm. This is not a worn-out pocket penny. This is a survivor, and survivors are where the money begins. Now here's where the story gets interesting. The year 1937 sits in a strange and powerful moment in American history. The country was still climbing out of the Great Depression. Money was tight. The U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of coins quickly, and when speed meets stress, mistakes happen. Most people believe rare coins only come from wartime years. But 1937 quietly produced some of the most dangerous varieties collectors hunt for today. In circulated condition, a normal 1937 wheat penny might only bring a few dollars. Even uncirculated examples often trade modestly. But extra fine condition is the danger zone, because it's exactly where rare varieties can hide unnoticed for decades. And when the right version shows up in this condition, values explode. Collectors obsess over 1937 double die varieties, especially those with doubling visible on Lincoln's date, motto, or lettering. This is not damage. This is a mint error created during the die-making process. Under magnification, you may see doubled edges on the numbers 1937, or subtle doubling in God We Trust. These coins slipped into circulation unnoticed, and today, they are monsters in the auction world. Then there are off-metal strikes and wrong planchet errors. where a 1937 penny was accidentally struck on the wrong metal. These are so rare that most collectors will never see one in their lifetime. When verified, authenticated, and preserved in extra fine condition, these errors have shattered expectations. Now here's the part that makes collectors' hands shake. A standard 1937 wheat penny in extra fine condition might sell for a respectable amount, but a 1937 Lincoln Wheat Penny with a confirmed double die or rare mint error, still holding strong detail like the one you're seeing, has reached six-figure territory in private sales. And in extreme cases, with pristine surfaces, bold strike, and a dramatic error, values have been whispered above $450,000 when two serious collectors refuse to back down. That's right. A single penny, nearly $500,000. And the scariest part, many of these coins were found in old jars, inherited collections, or forgotten albums where no one thought to look closely. People spent decades handling them, never realizing they were touching something that could pay off a home, fund retirement, or change a family's future. So when you look at this 1937 penny in extra fine condition, don't dismiss it. Look closer, study the date, examine the lettering, check the weight, listen to what the metal tells you, because history doesn't always shout, sometimes it whispers, and this penny is whispering something very dangerous. Take a moment with it, because next up, we're moving forward to another Lincoln Wheat Penny that shocked the collecting world even harder, and the value jump from here is something very few people are prepared for. Now moving on, and this is where things start to get very serious. You're looking at a 1929 Lincoln Wheat Penny in full fine condition. At first glance, it may seem worn. The high points of Lincoln's hair are smooth. The cheek has visible circulation, where the wheat lines on the reverse are not razor sharp anymore. But here's what most people don't understand: full fine is often the sweet spot for rare early varieties. Let's step back into 1929 for a moment. America was standing on the edge of disaster. The stock market crash hit in October of that year, launching the Great Depression. Coins from 1929 were struck during a period of economic uncertainty. Production was high in some mints, lower in others, and quality control wasn't always perfect. That combination creates opportunity, and opportunity creates rarity. Now here's where it gets exciting. The 1929 Lincoln Wheat Penny was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Most circulated examples are common, but the 1929s, and especially certain weakly struck or die variety examples, have stunned collectors for decades. In full, fine condition, the key detail to look for is clarity in the date and mint mark. If your coin carries a small s under the date, that's San Francisco, and that's where things begin to heat up. Even in full fine condition, a 1929s commands serious attention, because fewer were minted compared to Philadelphia issues. But wait, this is where the shock factor begins. There are known repunched mint mark varieties for 1929s. Under magnification, you might see slight doubling or shadowing around the S. That tiny detail, something most people would never notice, can multiply the coin's value dramatically. Collectors pay huge premiums for clean, problem-free examples with visible mint mark anomalies. And here's the part that surprises many viewers. Over 50, because this could easily be sitting in an old collection album right now. A regular 1929 in full fine condition might trade for a modest amount. A 1929s in strong, full fine condition? Now, you're entering four-figure territory, but a confirmed rare mint mark variety, authenticated and graded, even in full fine condition, has crossed into well over $85,000 in high-demand auctions when condition, color, and originality align. Yes, you heard that correctly. And if the coin shows an exceptional strike, clean surfaces, strong eye appeal, and a dramatic mint mark error, there have been private sales whispered into the $500,000 range when elite collectors compete for registry quality sets. $500,000 for a coin that many people once used to buy a loaf of bread. This is why condition matters so much. Full fine means the coin still carries strong design structure, The lettering is bold. The wheat stalks are visible. The rim is complete. It hasn't been destroyed by heavy wear or corrosion. That makes it highly collectible, especially for early Depression-era pieces. Here's how you identify potential value on your 1929. Check the mint mark under the date. Look closely for doubling or unusual placement of the S. Examine the surfaces. For original brown or reddish-brown color, avoid cleaned coins. Cleaning kills value instantly. And most importantly, verify weight and authenticity. If anything looks unusual, coins like this carry history. They survived the Great Depression. They passed through hands that were struggling to survive. And today, one of them could quietly hold six-figure power. Now, before we move to the next penny, and trust me, the next one jumps to an entirely different level. If you love uncovering hidden value in everyday coins, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because what's coming next makes these first to look calm by comparison. Take a breath, because the next Lincoln Wheat Penny we're about to reveal has shocked even seasoned experts, and its value climbs even higher. Alright, now lean in close, because this next penny is where collectors' hearts start beating faster. You're looking at a 1937D Lincoln Wheat Penny in extra fine condition. And the first thing that jumps out immediately is that red shade on the front. That color alone changes everything. Most pennies from the 1930s lost their original red brilliance decades ago. To see a Denver Mint coin from 1937 still holding red color on Lincoln's portrait is not just rare, it's dangerous. Let's talk about what this really means. The D mint mark tells us this coin was struck in Denver, a mint known in the 1930s for rougher strikes and faster production. Because of that, many Denver pennies wore down quickly or lost their original color early in circulation. That's why a 1937D surviving in extra fine condition is already desirable. But when you add original red or red-brown luster on the obverse, collectors start paying very close attention. Look at Lincoln's face. The jawline is still defined. The coat lines are visible. The hair above the ear hasn't melted away. That tells us this coin didn't spend decades grinding against other coins. It was either pulled from circulation early, or forgotten somewhere safe. Now here's where the suspense builds. Color is king in copper coins. A red Lincoln Wheat Penny means the copper hasn't fully oxidized. That original mint glow is extremely fragile. One wrong cleaning, one damp environment, one careless touch, and it's gone forever. So when a 1937D shows natural red color on the front, untouched, and original, grading services take notice immediately. And collectors? They compete fiercely. A typical 1937D Wheat Penny in circulated condition is common. Even extra fine brown examples are affordable. But extra fine with red color, especially from Denver, pushes the coin into an entirely different league. Add sharp strike quality and clean surfaces. And now, you're looking at a coin that's serious registry. Collectors want for top-rank sets. But we're not done yet. There are known die varieties, and subtle double details on some 1937D pennies. Slight doubling on lettering, minor die cracks, or unusual spacing in the date can turn a strong red example into something truly explosive. These details are easy to miss unless you know exactly what to look for, and many people never look twice. Now here comes the jaw-drop moment. A standard 1937D in extra fine brown condition may sell for a solid price. A 1937D in extra fine with original red color, properly graded and problem-free, has reached five-figure levels in public auctions. But when that same coin carries a confirmed variety or dramatic die error and retains eye-catching red luster, elite collectors have pushed prices into the high six-figure range. There have been private transactions rumored above $600,000 when condition, color, rarity, and demand collide at the perfect moment. Yes, over $500,000 for a penny. And the most unsettling part, many red-toned wheat pennies were stored away decades ago by people who simply liked the color. They didn't know about grading. They didn't know about registry sets. They just saved what looked nice. Today, Those choices can turn into generational wealth. So if you ever find a 1937D wheat penny with red color on Lincoln's face, do not clean it. Do not rub it. Do not store it loosely. Protect it immediately, because copper like this doesn't forgive mistakes. This coin tells a story of survival not just through history, but through time itself. Now, stay right here, because the next Lincoln Wheat Penny takes us into even darker territory, where minting mistakes and scarcity collide, and the value leaps to a level that leaves most people completely stunned. Now, let's shift to a year that many of you remember hearing about from your parents, or maybe you lived through its final chapter yourself. You're looking at a 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny in full fine condition, a coin struck during the final year of World War II. Think about that for a moment. This penny was made while American soldiers were still overseas. Factories were roaring. The country was tense. And the U.S. Mint was producing coins under immense national pressure. At first glance, a 1945 wheat penny might not seem special. In full fine condition, Lincoln's hair shows moderate wear. The cheek is smooth, but still outlined. The wheat stalks on the reverse are visible, though the finer lines have softened. The rim is complete. The date is strong. It is clearly circulated, but it has not been abused, and that's exactly where the hidden value begins. During the war years, metal composition and mint production were under constant strain. By 1945, the mint had returned to the normal bronze alloy after the famous 1943 steel cents. But the machinery was worn, dyes were overused, and quality control was stretched thin. That's when small errors slip through. Now, here's what makes the 1945 wheat penny so fascinating to collectors. There are documented double die varieties from 1945, especially noticeable in the lettering of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." Under magnification, you may see a slight shadowing or separation in the letters. It's subtle, easy to miss, but when confirmed, it transforms an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. And then there's the 1945S and 1945D mint issues. San Francisco and Denver both struck millions of coins, but certain die pairings created sharper strikes and scarcer variations. A full fine 1945S with strong detail and clean surfaces is already collectible, but when you add a verified doubled die or repunched mint mark into the mix, the energy changes instantly. Here's the part that shocks most viewers. A normal 1945 wheat penny in circulated condition might only be worth a small premium. Even in full fine, it may seem modest at first. But a confirmed 1945 double die and strong, full fine condition has crossed into tens of thousands of dollars at auction. And when condition improves, an eye appeal remains untouched. Examples have approached and exceeded $250,000 when certified and highly sought after, but we're not done. There are extremely rare transitional and off-metal errors known from the mid-1940s. If a 1945 penny was accidentally struck on the wrong planchet, something incredibly rare but documented in that era, values can surge into the $700,000 range or more, depending on authentication and preservation. That's right. A wartime penny, carried in pockets during one of the most intense periods in American history, could hold life-changing value. And here's what makes full fine condition so important. It means the coin still holds structure. The date is bold. The mint mark, if present, is clear. The surfaces haven't been destroyed by corrosion or harsh cleaning. Collectors want originality. They want history preserved, not polished away. So, how do you identify potential value in your 1945 wheat penny? First, check the mint mark under the date. No mint mark means Philadelphia, D for Denver, S for San Francisco. Second, examine the lettering carefully under magnification. Look for doubling, unusual spacing, or thickened letters. Third, weigh the coin. It should match the standard bronze composition for the year. And finally, never clean it. Even a light cleaning can reduce a six-figure coin down to pocket change. This penny represents the end of a global war. It passed through hands that were rationing sugar, saving rubber, and praying for loved ones overseas. And today, one example, in the right condition, with the right variety, could rival the value of a home. Take that in for a second, because the final coin in this lineup climbs even higher. And what happened with that Lincoln Wheat Penny has stunned collectors for generations. Stay with me, the grand reveal is next, and it may be the most unbelievable of them all. Now, we arrive at a penny that has caused more shock, more arguments, and more jaw-dropping auction moments than almost any other Lincoln Wheat cent ever made. You're looking at a 1944D Lincoln Wheat Penny in extra fine condition, and before you dismiss it, stop right there. Because this is one of the most dangerous pennies an American collector can hold. At first glance, it looks honest. Lincoln's portrait still has shape. The hair details are worn, but visible. The cheek shows smooth circulation, not damage. The wheat ears on the reverse are clear enough to instantly identify the design. The rim is complete. The date is bold. This is a well-preserved, naturally circulated coin. Exactly the kind collectors trust. But 1944 is not just any year. This penny was struck while World War II was still raging. The U.S. Mint had just come out of one of the most chaotic periods in coin production history. In 1943, the pennies were made from steel to save copper for the war effort. In 1944, the mint officially returned to bronze, but the transition was not clean, and that's where the legend begins. A small number of 1944D pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets meant for 1943. These coins were never supposed to exist. They slipped through unnoticed, entered circulation, and disappeared into everyday life. Most people will never see one, but here's what makes this extra fine 1944D so powerful. Condition does not matter unless the coin is correct. And when it is, everything changes. A normal bronze 1944D penny in extra fine condition is collectible, but modest. However, a 1944D steel cent, even with circulation wear, is one of the most valuable coins in American numismatics. And many were found exactly like this. Worn, honest, full fine to extra fine because they circulated before anyone knew what they were. Now imagine the moment. A collector checks a 1944D penny with a magnet, and it sticks. That single second has turned a 1-cent coin into a financial earthquake. Authentic 1944D steel cents are so rare that fewer than a handful are confirmed. When they appear, the entire collecting world pays attention. Even in circulated condition, verified examples have sold for well over $400,000. In extra fine condition, with clear date, visible mint mark, and natural surfaces, values have climbed past $1 million in private sales. Yes, $1 million. And here's the part that keeps experts awake at night. Many fake copies exist, but the real ones have exact weight, correct magnetic response, and specific die characteristics that grading services recognize instantly. That's why authentication is everything. But steel isn't the only danger. There are also repunched mint marks, die cracks, and planchet errors known on 1944D bronze pennies. While these don't reach 7 figures, some verified error examples in extra fine condition have crossed into high 6-figure territory. When I appeal and Rarity collide. So, how do you identify a potentially life-changing 1944D penny? First, test it with a magnet gently. Second, weigh it accurately. Third, inspect the mint mark closely for doubling or irregular shape. Fourth, look for unnatural color or altered surfaces. Those are red flags, and above all, never clean it. Cleaning can destroy hundreds of thousands of dollars in seconds. This penny represents the chaos of wartime America. It survived a metal shortage, rushed production, and decades of circulation. And today, one real example can outperform stocks, gold, and even real estate. So, when you hold a 1944D Lincoln Wheat Penny in extra fine condition, understand this: you are holding one of the most closely watched dates in U.S. coin history. A penny that doesn't just whisper value. It shouts it. And that concludes one of the most shocking Lincoln Wheat Penny lineups ever revealed. Appearance fool you. This is a 1920 Lincoln Wheat Penny, and in extra fine condition. It carries a story and a potential value that shocks even seasoned collectors. At first glance, the coin has a strong, honest presence. Abraham Lincoln's portrait still shows clear detail. His cheekbone is defined, the jawline is sharp, and the coat lines are visible without fading into the surface. That alone tells us something important. This penny did circulate, but it was handled gently. It wasn't abused, scraped, or worn flat by decades of careless use. For a coin that's now more than a century old, that's already impressive. Flip the coin over, and the two wheat stalks frame the words, 1 cent, with surprising strength. The lines in the wheat ears are still visible. The lettering is bold, not weak. The rims are full, not blended into the field. This is exactly what collectors look for when they hear the words, extra fine. It means history survived and condition survived with it. Now here's where the excitement starts to build. The year 1920 sits in a powerful moment in American history. The nation was just coming out of World War I. Soldiers were returning home. The economy was shifting. Inflation was rising. And everyday Americans were spending these exact pennies on bread, newspapers, and train fares. Millions were struck, yes, but very few survived in higher condition. Most were spent hard, saved poorly, and lost to time. That's why an extra fine 1920 wheat penny is not common anymore. But condition alone isn't the whole story. Collectors know that 1920 is a year where mint quality matters deeply. Subtle differences in strike strength, metal flow, and surface texture can turn a simple coin into a monster rarity. On well-preserved examples like this, collectors carefully inspect the date spacing, the sharpness of the Liberty, and the strength of Lincoln's ear and body. These details separate a $25 coin from one worth thousands. In circulated condition, a 1920 wheat penny may only bring modest value, but in extra fine condition like this one, values jump dramatically, often into the high hundreds or several $1,000s, depending on eye appeal and originality. And that's just the baseline. Here's the part that makes collectors sit up straight. Some 1920 wheat pennies were struck with subtle minting irregularities, microscopic die wear, weak planchets, or early-stage die cracks that only appear on better preserved coins. These aren't obvious errors you see right away. They're the kind discovered under magnification, the kind auction houses love, and the kind wealthy collectors fight over. When a 1920 penny like this is authenticated, graded, and found to have one of these rare characteristics, the value can explode. We're talking 5 figures, sometimes more, especially when paired with original red-brown color and untouched surfaces, and, in extremely rare cases, when a near-perfect example, surfaces with exceptional strike quality and historic pedigree. Values can push far beyond expectations. These are the coins that quietly sell behind closed doors, the ones that never make headlines but change lives. That's why holding a coin like this creates a strange feeling. You're not just holding copper, you're holding a moment in time, a piece of America that survived wars, economic change, and generations of use. And somehow, it made it to today in this condition. This is why older collectors, especially those who grew up handling wheat pennies, feel such a strong emotional pull. These coins were once ignored, tossed in jars, spent without thought, and now they're respected, studied, and hunted. If you have a 1920 wheat penny at home, don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't assume it's common. Look closely at the details. Look at the wear. Look at the color. Because what seems ordinary at first glance can quietly carry extraordinary value. And as we move forward in this series, remember this feeling, because the next coins don't just raise the stakes. They shatter expectations. Stay right here with us, Mint Mysteries. The story is only getting richer. Take a deep look at the coin on your screen right now. What you're holding may seem quiet, even ordinary at first glance, but this 1925 Lincoln Wheat Penny in extra fine condition carries a level of mystery and potential value that has stunned collectors for decades. This is one of those coins that hides its power in plain sight, and by the time we're done, you may never look at an old penny the same way again. Start with Lincoln's portrait. Notice how calm and strong his face still appears. The cheekbone hasn't flattened. The jawline hasn't melted away. You can still see separation in the coat, the curve of the collar, and even traces of the boatie. That tells us something critical right away. This coin circulated, yes, but it was respected. It wasn't abused. It survived when so many others didn't. For a penny that's nearly 100 years old, that alone places it into a more desirable category. Now flip it over slowly. The wheat stalks are still bold. The lines inside the wheat ears are visible, not smooth or faded. The words, 1 cent, and United States of America stand tall and clear. The rims are full. Nothing bleeds into the edge. This is the textbook definition of extra fine. And collectors know that condition like this is where values begin to climb fast. Now let's talk about why the year 1925 matters. America was changing rapidly in the mid-1920s. The country was in the middle of economic growth, industrial expansion, and cultural shift. Pennies were working hard past through factories, diners, train stations, and corner stores. Millions were struck, but most were worn down to smooth brown discs. Very few survived with detail still intact. That's why an extra fine 1925 wheat penny is no longer easy to find. But here's where the story gets exciting. Collectors don't just look at condition, they look at strike quality. In 1925, many pennies were struck with uneven pressure. Some came out weak, others came out sharp and strong. Like this one. When a coin shows crisp lettering, strong wheat lines, and even metal flow, it stands out instantly under professional grading. And the color matters too. Original surfaces are everything. An untouched 1925 penny with natural brown or red-brown color is far more valuable than a bright, clean coin. Cleaning destroys history. Originality preserves it. This coin shows natural aging, the kind collectors dream of. No harsh shine, no artificial brightness, just honest time. In circulated condition, a 1925 wheat penny might sell for a few dollars, but in extra fine condition, values jump into the hundreds quickly. When eye appeal is strong, they can push into the thousands. And that's before we even talk about varieties and errors. Here's the part that makes collectors lean forward. Some 1925 wheat pennies were struck from worn or misaligned dies. These coins can show subtle doubling in the date or lettering, minor die cracks, or unusual spacing that only appears on well-preserved examples. These aren't dramatic errors, they're the kind only experts spot. And those are the coins that auction houses love. When a 1925 penny like this is authenticated and graded, and a rare variety is confirmed, prices can explode. 5 figures is not unusual. And in exceptional cases, when a coin shows near-perfect strike quality, outstanding eye appeal, and historic provenance, values can rise into 6 figures. Yes, 6 figures. For a penny. And here's the emotional punch. Most people who own these coins inherited them, found them in jars, discovered them in old collections, tucked away and forgotten. They never imagined that something so small could carry so much value. That's why these moments are so powerful, because they connect everyday life to hidden history. For collectors aged 50, 60, even 70 years old, wheat pennies feel familiar. Many remember using them as children, spending them without a second thought. And now, those same pennies are being locked away in vaults, insured, certified, and fiercely competed over. That's the magic of the 1925 wheat penny. It's not loud. It doesn't scream rarity. But when condition, originality, and timing come together, it becomes something extraordinary. If you have one at home, do not clean it. Do not polish it. Look closely at the date, the detail, the color, because what you think is just an old penny could quietly be a serious collector coin. And remember this feeling, because the next coin in this series doesn't just raise the value, it raises the shock factor even higher. Stay with us, Mint Mysteries. The real surprises are still ahead. Take a breath and look closely at the coin you're seeing right now. This is not copper. This is not bronze. This is a 1943 wheat steel penny, and the rusty surface you notice immediately is exactly what makes this coin so powerful, so misunderstood, and in rare cases, so incredibly valuable. At first glance, many people panic when they see rust on a coin. They assume damage. They assume the coin is ruined. But with the 1943 steel penny, rust tells a deeper story, a story tied directly to World War II, rational survival, and one of the most dramatic metal changes in U.S. coin history. Hold this moment for a second. In 1943, the United States was fully engaged in the war effort. Copper was desperately needed for ammunition and military equipment. So the U.S. Mint made a decision that shocked the nation. Pennies would no longer be copper, they would be made of steel, coated in zinc. For 1 year only, millions were struck, yes. But survival is a different story. Now focus on the S mint mark below the date. That single letter tells us this coin was struck in San Francisco, a mint known for lower production numbers and stronger strikes compared to others. Already, that puts this coin into a more interesting category, like Lincoln's portrait. Even through the rust, you can still see shape and structure. The outline of the face is there. The coat lines are present. The lettering is readable. This tells us the coin wasn't completely destroyed by circulation. It lived a hard life, but not a careless one. Flip the coin over in your mind. The wheat stalks are still visible. The words 1 cent and United States of America haven't disappeared. The rims are worn, but still defined. That matters more than most people realize. Now, let's talk about the rust, because this is where the shock factor hits. Steel pennies were never meant to last. The zinc coating was thin. Once it wore off, moisture reached the steel core. And when steel meets moisture, rust is inevitable. Most people threw these coins away. Others spent them until they fell apart. That's why surviving examples, even rusty ones, are becoming harder to find every year. In poor condition, rusty 1943 steel penny might only be worth a few dollars. But this coin is different. Collectors don't just look at rust. They look at pattern. Uniform surface corrosion can actually indicate originality, and touch surfaces that were never cleaned or altered. And originality is gold in the collector world. Here's where it gets exciting. Some 1943 steel pennies were struck on improperly prepared planchets. Others show die cracks, weak strikes, or rare minting anomalies that only appear once rust exposes the surface beneath the zinc. These hidden details are often invisible on shiny examples, but visible on naturally aged coins like this one. When a 1943 steel penny with rust is authenticated, graded, and found to have a rare die variety or striking anomaly, values can jump into the thousands very quickly. But now comes the moment that makes collectors' hearts race. A small number of 1943 steel pennies were struck with exceptional strike quality, low mintage dies, and unique surface characteristics. When these coins appear with documented history, original corrosion, and rare mint diagnostics, they enter a completely different league. We're talking 5 figures, 6 figures, and in extreme cases, auction prices pushing toward the 7-figure range, especially when tied to wartime provenance or early mint production runs. Yes, even a rusty penny can be worth a fortune. That's why this coin creates so much confusion and excitement at the same time. People throw them away without realizing what they have. Others clean them, destroying value instantly. And only a few collectors understand that rust doesn't always mean damage. Sometimes, it means truth. This coin is a survivor. It passed through wartime America. It changed hands during rationing. It lived through moisture, neglect, and time, and still exists today. That alone makes it special. But when condition, mint mark, and rarity align, it becomes something far more powerful. If you find a 1943 steel penny like this, do not clean it. Do not scrape the rust. Do not try to make it shiny. What looks ugly to the untrained eye can be priceless to the right collector. And if this coin surprised you, brace yourself, because the next penny in this series doesn't just challenge what you think is valuable. It completely rewrites it. Stay right here with us. Mint Mysteries. The shock isn't over yet. Look closely at this coin right now, and clear your mind of everything you think you know about old pennies. What you're seeing is a 1943 steel wheat penny with no mint mark, struck in fine condition, and this small, gray coin carries one of the most intense and emotional stories in American coin history. At first glance, it feels simple, almost plain. A steel penny with no mint mark doesn't scream rarity to the untrained eye. Many people have held one. Many have spent one. Many have ignored one. And that is exactly why this coin has shocked collectors for decades. Let's start with what no mint mark really means. This penny was struck in Philadelphia, the main U.S. mint facility during World War II. In 1943, Philadelphia produced hundreds of millions of steel pennies to support a nation at war. Copper was redirected to bullets, wiring, and military equipment. Pennies became steel cold, hard, and temporary by design. And that's the key word, temporary. These coins were never meant to last. Now look at the condition. Even in fine condition, Lincoln's face is still recognizable. The outline of his cheek, jaw, and coat remains visible. The word liberty is readable. The date is clear. That alone is impressive for a steel coin that's more than 80 years old. Steel corrodes. Steel rusts. Steel fails. Most of these coins didn't survive this long. Turn the coin over in your mind. The wheat stalks are worn, but present. 1 cent is still legible. The rim is intact. This tells us something important. The coin circulated, but it wasn't destroyed. It lived a real life in wartime America, passed from hand to hand during rationing, factory shifts, and uncertain days. Now here's where the tension starts to build. Most people believe steel pennies are common and cheap. And in poor condition, many are. But condition changes everything. Fine condition is a breaking point for collectors. It's where the coin stops being scrap steel and starts becoming history. But there's more. Some 1943 steel pennies from Philadelphia were struck with early die states. That means the dies were fresh, sharp, and produced stronger details. When those coins survive with original surfaces, even in fine condition, they attract serious attention. Collectors carefully inspect no mint mark steel pennies for subtle signs, spacing in the date, thickness of the lettering, the shape of Lincoln's ear, and tiny die cracks near the wheat stalks. These details can separate a $10 coin from one worth thousands. Now, let's talk about what really shocks people. A standard 1943 steel penny in average shape might sell for a few dollars. But in fine condition, with strong eye appeal, prices can climb into the hundreds. When authenticated and professionally graded, values can reach 4 figures quickly. But when a no mint mark steel penny is discovered with a rare die variety, striking anomaly, or documented wartime provenance, the value can explode. Collectors have paid tens of thousands of dollars for steel pennies once thought ordinary. And in extremely rare situations, when a coin shows exceptional strike quality, originality, and rarity traits, values have reached 6 figures. Yes, even without a mint mark. That's what makes this coin dangerous to ignore. People throw them in junk drawers. Kids play with them because they stick to magnets. Others clean them to make them shiny, destroying value forever. And only a small group of collectors understands that originality matters more than shine. The steel penny is emotional for older Americans. Many remember seeing them as children. They felt strange. They looked different. They didn't sound right when dropped on a table. And then, almost as quickly as they appeared, they vanished. That disappearance is why surviving examples matter so much today. This coin is a survivor of a desperate time. A reminder that even money was sacrificed for victory. And when a piece of that history survives in collectible condition, it becomes far more than a penny. If you have one like this at home, don't dismiss it. Don't clean it. Don't assume it's common. Look at the date. Look at the surface. Look at the details. Because what feels ordinary can quietly be extraordinary. And stay with me, because the next coin in this series doesn't just increase in value. It delivers one of the biggest shocks in wheat penny history. Stay right here with us. Mint Mysteries. The story keeps getting deeper. Now take a close look at this next coin, because this is where confusion, disbelief, and shock all collide. What you're seeing is a 1/9 for 3D steel wheat penny, old, rusty, and worn by time, and this is exactly the kind of coin most people throw away without a second thought. But that mistake has cost some people a fortune. At first glance, this coin looks rough. The surface shows rust. The color is dark and uneven. The shine is long gone. And yet, right below the date, that small D mint mark quietly tells a powerful story. This penny was struck at the Denver Mint during the height of World War II, a time when America was under pressure, resources were scarce, and even the metal in your pocket mattered. Pause for a second and think about that. In 1943, copper was desperately needed for the war, so the mint replaced it with steel coated in zinc. These pennies were rushed into production. Speed mattered more than perfection, and the Denver Mint, producing fewer coins than Philadelphia, created pieces that would later become far more interesting to collectors. Now, at Lincoln's portrait, even through the rust and age, you can still see the outline of his face. The head shape is there. The lettering hasn't vanished. That tells us this coin lived a long, hard life. But it wasn't destroyed completely. It circulated. It was used. It passed through real hands in wartime America. Turn the coin over in your mind. The wheat stalks are worn, but still visible. 1 cent hasn't disappeared. The rim is weak, but present. This is not a smooth metal disc. This is a survivor. And here's where the tension starts to rise. Most people believe rust ruins a coin. And with copper pennies, that's often true. But steel pennies are different. Rust is part of their story. Once the thin zinc coating wore away, steel was exposed to air and moisture. Corrosion was inevitable. That's why truly original, naturally rusted steel pennies are becoming harder to find every year. Collectors don't just look at rust, they study it. Uniform corrosion can actually confirm originality. It tells experts the coin hasn't been cleaned, polished, or altered. And originality is everything in the collector world. A shiny steel penny is often a damaged steel penny. A naturally aged one like this can be far more desirable. Now here's the shock most people never expect. A common, heavily damaged steel penny might be worth only a few dollars. But a 1943D steel penny, even rusty, can move into a completely different category when certain traits are present. Denver Mint steel scents are closely examined for early dye states, strike anomalies, and rare minting characteristics. Some show weakly struck lettering. Others reveal dye cracks, metal flow lines, or unusual surface textures that only become visible after years of corrosion. These hidden traits can turn an overlooked coin into a serious collector target. When a 1943D steel penny like this is authenticated and professionally graded, values can jump into the hundreds, then the thousands, depending on rarity and eye appeal. But now comes the moment that makes collectors hold their breath. A very small number of 1943D steel pennies display exceptional strike quality, rare die varieties, or documented wartime production traits. When those coins survive even with rust and are verified by experts, prices can climb into 5 figures, and in extreme, headline-making cases when a coin shows unique mint characteristics combined with historic provenance, values have pushed into the 6-figure range. Yes, even a rusty, old steel penny. That's why this coin is so dangerous to underestimate. People clean them. People throw them away. Kids play with them because they stick to magnets. And every year, more original examples disappear forever. Meanwhile, serious collectors quietly compete for the few survivors that still tell the truth of 1943. For older Americans, this coin is emotional. It's a reminder of a time when nothing was wasted, when even pennies were sacrificed for victory, when money felt different, heavier, colder, temporary. This 1943D steel wheat penny lived through that moment. It survived moisture, neglect, and time. And now, decades later, it stands as proof that value doesn't always shine. Sometimes, it rusts. If you find one like this, don't clean it. Don't scrape it. Don't try to make it pretty. Because what looks ugly to one person can be priceless to another. And if this coin surprised you, prepare yourself. Because the next and final coin in the series delivers the kind of shock that has rewritten price guides and stunned Collectors across the country, stay right here with us. Mint mysteries, because the biggest reveal is still ahead.